Yo, what's up everybody? Welcome to my channel, Dopely Speaking. Today my title is China versus Japan. One must die. Why I'm gonna talk about it like this, right, is because everybody know the situation between China and Japan recently has been aggravated, has been deteriorated due to Sanae Takaichi's unapologetical, attitude, because she would never take back what she said. She actually represents the far right wing of Japan, and this branch of Japanese political power does not really apologize for what they've been doing, what they had been doing in the World War II, right? So they're kind of proud of the past glory. Because we have to switch the position. Even though I'm a Chinese, right, I kind of hate World War II. I kind of feel like it's pretty bad for the Japanese people invaded other Eastern nations, right? Don't get me wrong, Japan also tried to invade an American, but actually, we all know what happened on Pearl Harbor. I love today's Japan does not really mean I also love yesterday's Japan, right? I actually hate the World War II Japan. But me be living in Japan for about half a year, I live in Chiba, also live in Tokyo to study the, Japanese language, right, for half a year. So actually, I understand that many Japanese are still deeply proud of their past. Not everybody, though. So this topic is pretty sensitive, right, because even for many Americans, if you talk about the, atomic bomb, this Nagasaki, this kind of thing, right? Many people would see it as a taboo, right? But I'm just gonna tell you honestly, guys. Right? I'm just gonna tell you honestly, guys. So Japan is quite a revolutionized country. There's just a sharp contrast between the World War II era Japan and today's Japan. So the problem with Sanae Takaichi is that she's trying to bring back old glory. Try to remilitarize the whole nation and to make Japan a so-called normal country again. So they're thinking about importing the nuclear, battleship or nuclear submarines. So if they understand the nuclear military technology with the Japanese, their ability and their intellectual achievement, they will make the A-bomb pretty easy. And I don't think that will be challenging for them. So it's pretty dangerous because Americans also been watching this kind of progress, right? Because after all, we all know the thing happened between America and Japan. Nobody really want them to bring back their old so-called military glory. And once they capture, they have the technology of making the A-bombs. We have to know that America used to have two A-bombs on Japan and change Japan for a peaceful country, for the modern country, for the fashionable country, for the animation country, for the anime country that we all know nowadays, right? So I don't think that China want to see Japan have the nuclear weapon, and especially I don't really think America would want to Japan to have the capability of nuclear weapon as well. Especially America, right? So anyway, so let's go back. So why I would say China versus Japan, one must die? Because we're talking about, this kind of tension between, Sino-Japanese tension are aggravating to a zero-sum game. Why do I put it this way? Think about it. There are three major aspects for the Japanese to compete with the Chinese. Well, in this case, I'm not just talking about CCP Chinese, right? I'm talking about Chinese as a nation and, nationality. Even though everybody know that I hate CCP, but I have to tell you something objectively here about China because, the World War II actually happened before CCP took the regime in 1949. So the Kuomintang, the Chinese nationalists, actually fought most of the Japanese soldiers. And they're the human shield. They're being killed by many Japanese soldiers. Not just they're killing Japanese, but they're being killed by Japanese a lot. So actually, that's the Taiwanese army. If you think about a history, because that's the Kuomintang after losing to Chinese Liberation Army, the CCP's army, right? Kuomintang fled to Taiwan between 1948 and 1949. So for the October 1st, 1949, that's the PLA's, that's the CCP's national holiday. So CCP took the regime. Took over the mainland China, and Kuomintang fled to Taiwan. So think about this. It's actually when the World War II happened, right? The main battlefield is the Kuomintang, which means the Taiwanese soldier. They were fighting Japanese. So this, think about how interesting the history is. Okay, so let's skip all the bullshit here, right? So let's just go back to the topic here, but that's irrelevant. So the thing is that, think about this, China and Japan, we have three major fields to compete because we all represent the finest of the East Asian culture. Some people want to say, hey, dope, that's not a whole story because we're Korean. Koreans are so proud of ourselves. We're also different. We're more superior, this and that. Well, no objection, because you have the right. You can keep the right reserved to yourself. That's fine. I respect everybody's freedom of speech, right? But in my mind, we have to understand that in the ancient time, in Eastern Asia, China is the largest emperor. China is the largest central power, very authoritative power. I'm not talking about CCP. That's long before CCP's era. That's the old era that I'm proud of as a classical Chinese who I am. Right? So the thing is that, and Japanese also learn a lot from a Chinese in the Tang Dynasty, in the Song Dynasty, even in the early Ming Dynasty. Even though there are a lot of fight between Chinese and Japanese, for the truffles, right? Some truffle wars, not a mega warfare, right? However, we have to admit both of these countries in ancient time kind of shine, especially the China. And since in the modern time nowadays, right, in the international cultural arena, think about a Japanese manga. In the Japanese manga, there are a lot of Chinese ancient elements. For example, they talk about the Three Kingdoms period, the Sanguo period, right? They talk about, the monks. We know that the Buddhism actually went from India to China and then from China to Japan. So they talk about a lot of like soba, that's kind of a buckwheat noodles, right? Actually, the buckwheat noodles, all the noodle making is actually passed down from China to Japan. So we have a lot of traditions that Japanese just refine on a Chinese base. So Japanese people, they're just trying to sell this kind of cultural element to the Western world. So now we're talking about Oriental element, right? Most people, the first thing, they will not think about China. They will think about Japan. But now the situation is becoming a little bit like reversed. I'm not saying like fully reversed, right? But in the process of to be reversed. Think about a black myth Wukong and the black myth Zhonghui, the very famous Chinese game. So the Chinese game team learned from the Japanese technology and learned from the Western technology, and they're making even a better game, right? So think about the power of a Chinese, C-drama. People used to watch J-drama. Of course, J-drama is still my favorite. I think J-drama is a lot better than the C-drama, right? I can't really stand C-drama. There are some good ones, but most of them sucks. That's my personal taste. I love J-drama better. I love J-music. I love J-pop more than C-pop. That's my personal taste. But the thing is that internationally, China is promoting its own popular culture with the influence of TikTok, because we know that TikTok is made by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. So we have a lot of this kind of like Labubu. Think about Labubu, right? So Labubu is like a new Doraemon. It's just like a new Pikachu. So Japanese are actually compete with the Chinese fiercely, for the culture battlefield internationally, because they are trying to find who can really represent East Asian culture. That used to be Japan. But now, since the CCP China is on the rise, not just economically, they're making more of a soft power output. So many Western countries and the Western people begin to really understand, wow, how great the Chinese culture could be. I have to admit that kind of thing is massively controlled by the CCP China's culture campaign. I'm kind of against CCP, of course. Everybody, it's like I'm not kind of, right? I'm totally against CCP. I'm a dissident, right? I'm a fearful of ever return back to China, and life to death. It's kind of sentence me to death jail, or get me 5 years of imprisonment, but I might die in a prison before my release day, and I will be shot. I will be shot forever. I have no access to YouTube forever. I will go back to the VPN stuff, even if I have the luck to be alive after release from the prison. But I don't want to imagine that. I would never go back to mainland China unless CCP changed to be a democratic region, or CCP kind of went down. Will bring CCP down. That's another story. So think about this, right? How about a Korean, right? The Korean, the K-pop, right? K-pop is also massively regulated by the Korean Culture Management, the bureau. Whichever the bureau's name is, I don't really care, but there is a bureau. So it's the same. CCP is massively control this kind of culture output nowadays with the national power on it. So Japan, of course, will be so fearful. Now we have a lot of CCP game coming from China, not just for the black myth Wukong. There's one called Yuan Shen. I don't know how to translate in English, but many. If you have a rambling, around Shibuya, around like Harajuku, like last year, you can also see some advertisement like that. But maybe this year, you just drive away many of this ACG advertisement, and that's not also all the host club and hostesses, right? They've changed that. But anyway. So Japan and China to compete about the cultural popularity. Who can really represent the Oriental culture? Who is the #1 Oriental culture spokesperson or spokescountry? They are fighting to death. And CCP China would use every opportunity to scratch down Japan. Not just because these people are vanity. They want to be famous. Right? They also want to legitimize their ruling over Chinese people. Okay, they want the Chinese people to say, okay, look how fashionable Chinese culture are. Look how classic our Chinese culture are. Look how marvelous, how brilliant our C-pop, our C-drama are, our C-games are. You guys, you poor guys, you slaves, you should be proud of your master. That's CCP's way to legitimize the whole situation. Be very clear of that. Alright, objectively Japanese people might get offended to say, wow, you have a powerful, authoritative one-party system to control everything and you outcompete me because your nation just put a lot of money to the pocket of the ACG makers? It's unfair. That's unfair subsidy. So the first arena is the culture popularity arena. And then I enlisted the second factor, second arena of competition between China and Japan is geopolitical dominance. We all know that in the Trans-Pacific region, we just have 3 big power, right? America, China, and possibly Japan. Don't talk about Korea. Don't talk about Australia. They are small players, excuse my language, but don't get offended, folks, right? That's a fact. You have to admit, America #1 because on the first island chain, where there are so many aircraft carriers, we have a lot of submarines, we have the most cutting-edge technology, nuclear launching shit from the submarines, we have a lot of base in different islands, maybe some secret base would never reveal you the name, but it's just like 07, I mean, like the I don't know which episode it's like. Maybe it's like Diamonds Are Forever. I don't need love. It's like, I kind of forget. Maybe it's like episode 2 or episode 4. The Diamonds Are Forever, like that. Do you remember there's an island? Something like that. And coincidentally, that person is a Chinese mixed person. He looked like a Chinese. Do you still remember the scenario there? Yeah. Possibly we have so many unnamed secret A-bomb launching shaft. Just like a Westwood Command and Conquest, right? In 1995. When I was a little boy, I used to play that Westwood Command and Conquest. That's one of the most classic PC games made ever. Period. No discussion. End of the story. Okay, end of the discussion. So the thing is that in this region, right now the #2 is China. But China, of course, want to outrun and outcompete American force. So you can see that a lot of new battleships, a lot of new aircraft carriers are planning to be released into water. And some of them have already been released into water. Some of them you know their name, some of them you don't know their name. Maybe they're equipped with higher technology weapon that you've never heard of. So it's kind of intimidating that China, especially, I'm not talking about democratic China because that thing's not happening yet. The only democratic China we have right now is Taiwan, okay? I'm talking about authoritative CCP China is on the rise. Think about how dangerous that is, right? Dangerous. How dangerous that is, right? And Japan, can Japan really suck it in? No, because Japan have so many problems nowadays. Don't get me wrong, I love Japan. Japan is still a country of hope. When I live in Japan, I feel like it's a paradise. Really. People are polite, respectful, the air is pristine clean, just like clean as a crystal, And the road, even the road is very clean. Unlike Brooklyn, New York, like we have trash everywhere. I'm not trying to bring American image down, but we have to know that in many American, like major part of America, like 99% of America is quite clean. We're talking about New Jersey, we're talking about Colorado, we're talking about any other city like Florida, but New York is filthy. So what? New York is freedom, right? Anyway, so the thing is that this kind of thing is Japanese people, they will feel under threat after the World War II new structure because their military has become a eunuch. We all know they have been castrated. So the problem is that China is growing stronger militarily, economically, agriculturally, and culturally. You know what I mean? It feels like if Japan do not fight with China, Japan will lose all its value in East Asia. Think about what else Japan have. If China can have a much better army, which already is, but even 10 times, 100 times better from now, right? And then took all the high-end chip making, because China is also making a lot of progress in the semiconductors industry, right? And think about China even make some animation nowadays. And some of these Chinese animations sell pretty well. You know, like a Nordra, you know, like that one was famous as well. And think about all the games. They can really outperform some Japanese game. You know, when I was a boy, everybody was playing SNK Capcom, you know? Till today, I still like King of Fighters and Street Fighters, you know, the arcade fighting game. Like that. The combo, you know, combo to death. You know that? And also like play PS, PS1, PS2, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, you know, all these great memories are made by Japanese games and animations. But China are trying to copy that and even make a better version of that. So it seems like if Japan never fight back, it seems like Japan will lose all its like owning territory, like it's a competition aura, it's competitive edge to China, based on the former glory of the older generation that the Sanae Takaichi represent, because they still live in the Showa Jidai, which means the Showa period, right? So that's when I was born. I was born in 1985. I was born in Showa Jidai, right? And that time, people were so proud of Japan. They say that because in the Showa Jidai, that's also in the Showa Jidai that Japan invaded some other Asian countries. And they're so proud of themselves to say, oh, we're the center of Asia. We're strong. We can even fight the Caucasian. We can beat them up. And look at how we win the war against Russia for the Russo-Japanese War, you know? We're number one. We're Japanese people, the smartest. We're the beautiful, most handsome, and this and that. You know, Japanese people are a bunch of proud people. No offense. I like that because I'm proud as well. I'm proud to be East Asian. I'm proud to be Chinese, but I do not like CCP. That is pretty simple. So when I live in Japan, everybody, I feel like their clothes is well suited. You know, like they talk to you like it's like in a very respectful manner. So when they respect me, you know what? I will respect them back. You know, respect is mutual. I love Japan. Don't get me wrong, but we have to face the objective fact. That is, Japan is gradually losing to China in many areas, and including international glory. So what? They want to be king. They still want to restore that because they've had enough. Let me tell you, they've had enough. After, you know, the Square Treaty with Americans, you know, in the late 1980s, right? And in early 1990s, 1992, Japanese economy went to the climax, the culmination, and then just went down from there. Straight down. After the stock market crashed and the social credit system was destroyed and the real estate bubble got bursted finally. You know what I mean? So Japanese people had never become satisfied ever since then, because these used to have that kind of glory. You know what I mean? And now, can you imagine another country or another nation that Japanese people used to look down upon? They rise up? No, the Japanese national pride can never tolerate that to be happening. I kind of understand it, okay? So they gotta strive for the geopolitical dominance in East Asia. They want to say nation number one, Nihon number one, Nihon Ichiban, something like that. So they have to fight to death, just like a dog fight. And the third thing is that industrial dominance, right? We all know that in the 1970s and 1980s, how great, even 1990s and early 2000s, how great the Japanese industries were. We have Sony, we have Panasonic, we have Mitsubishi, right? We have a lot of great companies making the hardware, making the computer hardware, making the Walkman, the CD player, all over the world, like DVD player, right? Even now we're living in America, right? I have conversation with many American local guys, right? Like New York local people, right? When they were young kid like me, they also played the King of Fighters, the Street Fighters, like the Capcom, the Japanese arcade game. They also played Nintendo, Super Nintendo. You know, they also have the home appliances made by Sony or NEC or Panasonic, right? It's almost the same story. In the 1970s and 1980s, Japan dominated the industrial world, but now, what do we have? Well, it's mostly Chinese. First of all, made in China used to be cheap, right? People say, oh, you're cheap. You're just cheap bastards, right? Like, you're cheap. If you buy Chinese things, you're cheap because they're cheaply made. And it might burn. It might just burn the house down, things like that. And now we know We also have some high-end made in China stuff, and they're good. Of course, we still have a little crappy, low-end made in China. But the thing about made in China is that they operate different level of different merchandises. They have the highest of the highest. They have the mid-level. They have the lowest. They have the lower. They have the lowest of the lowest. They have the totally crap. You can just use one time and it got destroyed, right? So we have all level of Chinese product. That's the problem. Think about Louis Vuitton, right? Versace, Gucci, okay, let me tell you what. Last time, you guys know, right? It's actually the Japanese factory workers that's, Vans called a Chinese presence, so to speak, right? I'm not trying to jeer in there, but, because I'm also Chinese, but it's kind of really disrespectful, to be honest, right? But I kind of understand, right? Because Vans really hate on Chinese CCP that much. I understand it. But these poor people, they might be innocent. They might be the real prison though, He's not exaggerating, but you can never call every Chinese people present, right? We have very rich people and very fashionable people in China, don't get me wrong. So the thing is that these Chinese present workers, right? These workers working as this factory massively produced the LV bag. So the LV bag almost like finished like 98 or even 99.5% of all the manufacturing process, all the manufacturing procedures, and then sent back to France or Italy, where that so-called branded country is from, right? And they brand that with the final fine-tuning of that. Maybe they have some old grannies, may have some experienced, high hands, right? Masters. They just check that one by one. They just say, oh, this like they're gonna be final finished, and that's it. That's it. You can never say that Gucci bag or LV bag, Louis Vuitton is made entirely in Italy or France. No, I have to tell you that the ones you spend $5,000 on, maybe $50,000 on, are made by the cheap Chinese present hands. How disappointing is that? That's kind of thing. So the thing is that they're making the highest of the highest, right? They are. They are also making lowest of the lowest. So Japanese industry compared with China is kind of, we still have a lot of cutting edge technology in Japan. Don't get me wrong. So when I was living in Japan, I used to go to a very cheap place. Maybe everybody know. Don Quixote. Don Quixote. The Don Quixote, right? The Don Quixote. Don Quixote, this kind of chain store. And it's very cheap, but it's more like, Periscope. It has almost like everything, right? So you can buy paint, you can buy a pair of socks, you can buy stockings, you can buy shoes, you can buy glasses, you can buy this and then you can buy a lot of different things, sunglasses to be cool. You can even buy some tofu or bean sprouts or some kind of wagyu beef there. Yeah, you can buy everything. So I've noticed when I was there in Japan, right? Like, almost like 70% of the Don Quixote stuff were made in China. But let me tell you, shockingly to find, they are like 30% made in Japan. I don't know, maybe that's fake. Maybe that one's actually made in China, but they've rebranded like made in Japan. Otherwise, it won't sell. I don't know, maybe that's the reason. But I believe Japanese people would not lie on a massive scale. I trust the integrity of Japanese people. So I feel like, wow, in Don Quixote, you have like 30% of this merchandise made in Japan, and you can make that good and cheaply? You joking? So it feels like Japanese industrial power is still there. Still there. Just because many of this country favor made in China, I do not really think the made in Japan technology is falling behind. I feel like the made in China is because made in China can be cheap and made in China can be massively produced. Think about, everybody know that I like legs and feet, right? I'm a fetish guy, because I even make a song named The Black Stocking. If you check my rap column here, right? So I also wear some tights or stockings by myself, I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed of that because that's my personal hobby. That's who I am. I'm proud of it. I like it. So the quality of the stockings made in Japan is still 10 times, if not 100 times better than that of made in China. Well, made in China is becoming better, a lot better. Just trust me. They have the highest cost performance because you're not expected to wear a pair of stockings for a century, right? But for example, made in Japan, the Atsuki brand is really good, very fashionable, but a little bit expensive. But if you can wear that pair of stockings, usually that stocking can last about 1 or 2 months. Or even longer if you really take care of it. But if you wear a cheaply made pair of Chinese stockings, That one, you know, your toe might stretch out to the end of the stocking and broke it the next day. Don't get me wrong, right? If you take good care of it, if you cut your toenails, if your feet are not stink, joking. Maybe that pair of stocking can last about 1 month. You know what I'm talking about? So, but now we have to understand the glory history, the glory dominance of made in Japan is long gone. That's a fact. Now it's made in China. Especially in some more economical countries, like, you know, people cannot really afford a luxury lifestyle, you know, on a massive scale. Don't get me wrong, in every country we have rich people, right? But what I'm talking about for the general population to be more and more of a more like a poorer scale, right? Indonesia, Malaysia, or some Latin American countries, made in China is the mainstream. That's it. That's a gleam fact. Even in New York, even in America, most people are common people, right? Made in China is the mainstream. Well, we still have made in Italy, made in the USA, made in Japan, of course, but the number of made in China goods is almost the dominating, like it is dominant force everywhere. No matter you're talking about Walmart, of course, Shein is the Chinese app, right? Amazon, it's like 95% made in China, even higher. Okay, so it feels like Japan and China is on a culmination of conflict nowadays because Japan has been suffering from the rise of China for such a long time, for many decades already, and it's time. So that's why I kind of understand why Sanae Takaichi will not eat her own words, will not take it back. Because if she take it back, she show any sign of weakness to the Chinese power, she's gonna go off stage, you know? She does not want to become the first female prime minister, but who just stay on the position for about 2 months, right? So that's why we have to understand why Sanae Takaichi would still stick to the fight. Never give up, never give in. That's what I want to see, because I want to see where this kind of fight is finally lead to. Hopefully that will lead to a war. I'm not a warmonger, right? But you know why? Because if there is a real war between China and Japan, the CCP China, okay, don't get me wrong, I'm gonna have a look like whether that will become an international force to overturn CCP. That's my point. Okay, have a nice day.